Well, good morning, everyone. So many of you are on time, 11 o'clock exactly. So welcome to our book discussion. We call it Books That Work for Leaders. And every 2 weeks, we pick a different book and we do this discussion. I am personally really excited to dive into the Leadership Challenge book together because to me, leadership is not something you work on once, right? It's something that's never done, and you constantly have to practice, adjust, and learn. And that's what I think makes this conversation so valuable. If we haven't met before, my name is Maya Demishkovich, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Carroll Community College, and I will be your moderator today. And before we start, I want to cover some housekeeping items. First, you are not required to read the book to participate in this discussion. We will cover the main points and John will provide an overview, but I am still curious how many of you have read this book. So if you could answer the poll that you should see on your screen right now, that would be great. But again, you're not required to read the book. Today's session is being recorded, and we will send a replay to everyone who registered. We also save it on our website, so anytime you miss a recording or miss a webinar, you can go back to carrollcc.edu/webinars and see all the past recordings. We have a Q&A option at the top of the screen, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to ask those questions, and I'll make sure that John addresses them at the end or throughout the presentation. And I hope you stick till the end, because at the end we'll share a worksheet, something that you can actually take back to your team and use it to improve your leadership skills. For those of you who are new to this webinar, or maybe have never heard of Business Solutions or have never met John, I want to provide a quick overview. So Business Solution is a service provided by the college, and they partner with organizations to deliver customized training and consulting. They focus on developing leaders, aligning teams, and driving real results. One thing that I think makes Business Solutions very unique is their approach. They don't believe in one-size-fits-all model, and they really work with organizations to understand their goals, understand their challenges, and build solutions that are custom, practical, and relevant to help them see better results. So at this point, I would like to welcome our presenter, John Ziegenfuss. John is the Senior Director of Business Solutions, and he will be leading today's webinar. So please welcome John.
Well, thank you very much, Maya. I feel very humbled by your introduction, so much appreciated. So, yeah, well, let's jump into it. So I know Maya asked the question, how many of you have read the book? And as she said, it's not really, not necessary for this conversation, but I'm going to do a strong push for you to read the book or do a deeper dive in it through the content we delivered today, because I think it's amazing. Quick question for you, and you don't have to put this in the chat. I just want you to think about this, maybe write on a piece of paper next to you. Or just have the answer in mind. The question is, what do you look for or admire most in a leader? What do you look for or admire most in a leader? So think about that. I'll give you like 3 or 4 seconds, and then we'll go on. I really want to start with talking about the purpose of today's session. It's really to help people in leadership. It is called the Leadership Challenge. And I just want to make sure that leadership is not positional. Everyone can be a leader. You can lead without a title. You can lead side by side. It's how you interact with your coworkers, your direct reports, or your supervisor. So leadership is not a matter of position and authority. It's really about influence. So with that, the purpose of, so if you're not a leader or leading a team, there's still something very practical in here for you. If you are leading a team and do have direct reports, I think some of this stuff is foundational and very necessary. So the purpose here, I've got a couple of objectives. Is one, I want to make sure that we can all identify the 5 practices of exemplary leadership by the time the session's over. And it's really just 5. and you're like, John, I think there's a little bit more, but just wait, hold off some of your and your critiques because I think it plays out really well. Then the second one is we want to distinguish between a practice and behaviors, and maybe that's very nuanced in there, but there's practices and behaviors. And behaviors, there's a much longer list with that, and we'll take a look at a few of them. We can't look at all of them because I think there's over 30, so not enough time in this webinar. The third one is we want to recognize the role of credibility and leadership effectiveness. And depending how you define credibility, it's really a person saying, do I trust this person, right? And then the fourth one, apply a few key leadership behaviors to a real-world situation. And then I'd like to ask you at the end of this session to commit to a specific leadership action plan. Just one thing you can do in the next week, the next month, or a couple things over the next year to increase your capacity as a leader, whether it's from your position in your organization or it's just laterally. All right, it doesn't have to always be vertically. And I know we think that way, but we want to try to change that mindset. So the content that we're using, and as Maya said, is from the book, The Leadership Challenge. Well, I can't tell you, I can't be more excited about this. And this book, I've read a lot of books about leadership, okay? But this book kind of took some of what I've read and heard through a podcast, TED Talks, whatever. It feels like it turns it upside down a little bit. It's kind of a big paradigm shift for me. So as we go through this, we're going to gain the overview of the 5 practices, understand the differences, all those things, credibility. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. Here's a good working definition of leadership. Leadership is the ability to influence others toward a shared purpose. It's that you use your relationships, your personality, whatever you have at your disposal to help influence others, even your habits, toward a shared purpose, that we're moving in the same direction. So I want to start with the story, and I'm going to add probably a lot of detail in this story, but I think it really serves to set the stage well for what we're going to be talking about today. So the story is back in the early or late 1400s, and it starts with a huge block of marble. It's a 17-foot high block of marble. So if you put that in math, that's like 2.5 Shaquille O'Neals. Okay, I mean, this thing is massive, several tons. But the problem with this marble, it was flawed, and the marble was brought to Florence, Italy, for somebody to carve a significant statue to put outside of a church, or actually on the roof of a church. But when some artists, Renaissance artists, came and looked at it, they said, there's nothing I can do with this block of marble. It's a little bit too flawed. It's got fissures in it. It's got tiny cracks, multiple veins. It's awkward dimensions. It's way too narrow. Can't do anything with it. So it sat for 25 years out in the elements, kind of deteriorating a little bit. And the block came the famous name, an Italian name, Il Gigante, which means the giant. So it had kind of gotten dismissed for a while, up until a young artist, who was 25 years old, was asked, can you do anything with it? And he started to look at it a little bit differently. He said, I think I see some potential. I mean, the block had been dismissed as hopeless, but he looked at it, like I said, very differently. And where other artists saw something that should be dismissed, he actually saw an opportunity. And with the right vision, the right tools, the right process, he went against the advice of his contemporaries, who warned him, don't work on that, you could ruin your reputation. But he wasn't discouraged, all right? And he started to kind of chisel away on it. It took him about 3.5 years to carve a statue of this block of marble. And when he had finished it, it actually instantly became a masterpiece. So he went against the advice of his contemporaries, who warned him, don't do it. He wasn't discouraged, and he believed that the figure was already within the stone, and he simply needed to set it free. Some of you might have already connected the dots about the story. You've probably heard it before. But here's the quote from the artist. He said, I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set it free. That was a quote from Michelangelo, and he was asked, how did you carve something so beautiful, so magnificent, so significant, that's going to endure the time and generations? And he said he was able to see something in this flawed block of marble that others couldn't see. Well, the statue that he carved is known as the David. Instantly became a masterpiece because the sculptor believed it still had something to offer. So just a few little other details. It was carved very uniquely. One of the things, if you've ever seen it, it's in Florence still. Okay, you ever look at it, the hands, people were amazed at the detail of the hands. Crevices in the knuckles, veins popping out, and how you had to remove everything away, but leave that stuff to be part of it. I mean, you can even see cuticles if you look at the hands close enough. Just amazing. And in the little note there, the heads and the hands were slightly proportioned larger. This is his artistic approach in this, because in the Renaissance humanism of the day, the hand and the head were considered man's greatest tools. How you think and then what you do. So by enlarging them slightly, he was highlighting that a man's thought and action are very important and kind of tied together, and is what was required for David's victory against Goliath. And the last little bit of little nuanced information that you want about the David is when he carved the eyes. Look at the beauty of the eye here. The eyebrows with hair, the eyelids, incredible detail, but you'll see the pupil is carved as a heart in both of his eyes. And the reason behind that is he tells the story, or he told the story, that as the story is recounted in the Bible, he says that David was a man after God's own heart. And he took that to heart, is that the windows are the eyes of the soul, or that the eyes that are the windows to the soul, and that I need to reflect David's character even in his eyes and what he pursued. So anyway, I tell you that story for a reason, not to just look at how beautiful it is, how amazing it is, but I think it's a symbol of something more. What is possible when someone sees potential where others see failure? So I have that at the top of the slide. Okay? And that's where the leadership challenge comes along, because that was my personal journey through that. Here's a couple of quotes that I pulled from the book. Leadership isn't a private reserve of a few charismatic men and women. It's a process ordinary people use when they're bringing forth the best from themselves and others. To liberate the leader in everyone, and extraordinary things happen. Doesn't that sound like Michelangelo's quote, I saw the angel within and I carved until I set it free? Is that to liberate the leader in everyone? We all have flaws, we've all got mistakes, we've all got quirks, but there is a great leader hidden inside each of us that they talk about in this book, that with the right tools, the right process, the right time, the right artist, if you will, can take that and develop that person into a greater leader than who they are. And I like the quote here, because so many times we hear things like there's a natural born leader. Well, that's not true. Science has proven that, psychology has proven that, but I know what they mean. They mean this person has some certain qualities that they're able to articulate a little bit better. They're able to, they're more charismatic, dynamic, passionate. And those are qualities sometimes we look for in a leader, but they might not have been natural. They could have been developed, and you don't know that. So anybody is capable of leadership given the right tools. And this book is a wonderful tool. So as I read this book, I viewed myself as this block of marble. I kind of became the statue. And that I had some things that I had to work on to become a better leader in past lives, right? Before I came here to the college. That a leader first needs to shape their own character, their own habits, and their own credibility. And it takes time to chisel some of those things away, some of those habits, and maybe our own perceptions of leadership. And it can be a little bit painful. And then to flip the script is leaders here, the second quote, search for opportunities for people to exceed their previous levels of performance. Is that we're the statue. We read the book, we took Kouzes and Posner's information, and we became a better leader. We chiseled away some of our habits, perceptions, and quirks that we thought were about leadership. And now that we are becoming a better leader, we now get to be the sculptor. That great leaders then help bring out potential in others. It kind of goes as 360. So I think that story really ties in well with it, the authors of the Leadership Challenge and what I saw. First, I need to work on myself. And after I work on myself and become a leader, I can look at other people and say, there's talent there. I know they got flaws. I know they got issues, but let's work at it. So before leaders create great teams, you must first become a great leader. So in the wrap up this little story, before leaders sculpt a great team, they must sculpt themselves. So taking that story, and hopefully it's a little bit inspirational, you can see how it ties in so well with the connection of what the authors are doing here in this book, is I asked you a question at the beginning of this webinar. What do you most look for and admire in a leader? Well, that's how Kouzes and Posner started their research. So they didn't start with define a great leader. Tell us the qualities you're looking for, the characteristics you're looking for. It's what do you most admire? What do you most admire? So they kind of started backwards. And they got a ton of answers, but they kind of went through this root cause analysis and doubled down. When people gave a certain response, they asked, why did you give that response? And they asked, well, why did you give that response? And they did it a series of times. If you've ever done a root cause analysis, you know that the 5 why strategy, okay, why, and then you kind of get to the root cause by the 5th why. When they got a myriad of different answers, it all came back to credibility. And credibility is defined as the trust you earn when your words, your actions, and your values consistently align over a long period of time. Credibility is the confidence others place in you because they see that alignment and they trust you. They know what to expect. I mean, and Kouzes and Posner would say credibility is the foundation of leadership. What makes people choose to follow you. And it's not coercion. It's not manipulation. It's not intimidation using power or authority or sweet talking or sales pitching. It's they see it. And I think what we need to remember most is that credibility isn't claimed. You have to earn it over consistent, observable behavior. And people will always follow a person before they follow a position or a plan. And that's critical. What kind of person are you to carry the mantle of leadership that's been placed upon you, right? People will follow the person before they follow the position or the plan. So if you're not a credible person, even though you have hierarchy and authority, it's going to be hard to generate followership and garnish your influence. Even if you come up with an incredible plan, if they don't trust the person delivering the plan, it kind of falls on deaf ears. And you're like, why am I struggling so much? Why am I struggling so much? Well, they're giving you feedback, right? That you got to go ahead and work on your credibility. Little formula there. I was a math person in my past life. So words plus actions plus values equals credibility. So get that in our head. It's not just what we say, okay? We can proclaim anything, but it's what we practice, all right? And what we practice actually drives that. So stop proclaiming and start practicing these things. And that's where this book, I think, is by far one of the, I was going to say one of the best, but I could say it is the best leadership book I've ever written. And I've probably read close to 40 leadership books. So hands down, I think this is great. So there's a little snafu on this next slide. So we'll pretend you don't see that little envision the future underneath that the inspire a shared vision. But these are the 5 practices that it kind of boiled down to. It's 1, we want to model the way. 2, inspire shared vision. 3, challenge the process. 4, enable others to act. And 5, encourage the heart. These practices kind of define what great leaders do. And the behaviors that follow after that determine whether it actually happens. So that means the leadership mantle is firmly put in the person's hand that's winning it. All you have to do is act like a leader, and then you become a leader. Don't try to become a leader and hope the actions kind of trickle down. Okay, just start working on that. And that's where I said they flipped the paradigm upside down. It wasn't, what's your philosophy of leadership? Hopefully that trickles down and people observe it. It's, hey, these are the behaviors that leaders do. If you start practicing this, you're going to elevate and build up on your leadership. You start at the foundation. And that makes sense when we think about buildings. You always start with the foundation. You never start with the roof. But somehow in leadership and in academia and understanding leadership, we always wanted to start with the roof and then hope the foundation fills in afterwards. It just doesn't work like that. And that's why I think this is such a practical book. So when we talk about modeling the way, really, leaders go first. They have to clarify their values and set the example. Set the example. I mean, just think about a real world example. If you want people to be on time, then the leader needs to be on time. You set the example, and then you kind of hold people accountable to that. We'll kind of get that through the list. But clarify and set the example. So these are really what they would call the 10 commandments, these 5 practices and 2 kind of commands underneath each one. So inspire shared vision, be able to envision the future and be able to articulate it well, and then invite others into it. Join the team, join my process, join what we're doing here. Okay. So I said leaders go first is model the way. Number 2, leaders create a picture that people want to be a part of. They are able to articulate a compelling enough case that people say, I'm in, and I'm in because I trust you. And because I trust you, I can trust your plan. All right. And because I trust you and your plan, then the position is really a moot point and I'm in. Okay. So number 3 is challenge the process, right? So seek opportunities to improve yourself and the organization and your processes, whatever they are, and then take risks and learn. That leaders are willing to try, fail, and learn. We use another name. We call it innovation. But innovation always first meets with failure as you're trying to figure it out. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid of not trying. All right. Number 4, enable others to act. Well, that's when leaders make others stronger. You build trust by giving them responsibility and handing things off in a way that doesn't feel like you're passing off your work. And saying in business is passive leaders pass off work. It's you're actually giving them a project to do that you say, I trust you with this project. It's very important. You might struggle, but I'm right here with you. And it strengthens others. Your team will be better if you're not the bottleneck. And number 5, encourage the heart. So recognize contribution, celebrate progress. As leaders recognize what really matters and not working a little bit more in the affective domain. And you can kind of go through this and see, boy, it really touches all components of who we are as people, right? It's the cognitive domain, right? Challenging the process, figuring things out. It's the affective domain, how we feel about our job through building trust and being passionate about doing that. And it's the physical domain, actually doing it. I mean, that's who we are, right? And how we learn to do that. So yeah, I want to encourage you with those things. I got a lot more I can talk about this slide, but I'm afraid I've run out of time. But maybe if I could just pick 1 or 2 to talk about it rather than all 5. If I look at inspire to share vision right here, okay, leaders create a picture that people want to be a part of. So one of the behaviors that falls underneath of that, it's you regularly connect daily work to a bigger purpose. So somehow it's not, we just got to get this done, this done, this done, this done, is you stop and you ask the question, okay, why is this important to us? For us here at the college, it's like, okay, we want to market this, we want to do this. Okay, why is that important? I just don't want to be tied to a task. I want to be tied to a purpose. And that goes all the way back. It integrates in Simon Sinek's, like the purpose of why, the golden circle. Don't just talk about what you do, that's your product. Don't just talk about how you do it, that's your process. Talk about why you do it, that's your purpose. And that's really, really important. Another behavior under number 2, inspire shared vision, is ask team members for input about the future of the organization and the future of them in the department and their future. An example would be, what would success look like for us in 6 months? How would you gauge whether we're doing a good job in 6 months? What data would you want to see? What impact would you want to see? So you ask your direct reports or the people next to you, say, what would success look like for us 6 months from now? I don't know that anybody's ever asked a lot of people that question. I don't know that I've ever been really asked that question. And I've been working in the workforce for 35 years. And that's intriguing, is you're inviting them in to be a part of that. So I know time is probably going to be our enemy here soon. It's still our ally. So I just want to kind of wrap up this slide. We don't have time to go deep into all 5 of these, but I am going to focus just on 2 for our conversation here. And hopefully this is enough of an appetizer that makes you want to learn a little bit more, to have another conversation, put together a little team at your work to kind of do this and see how we can implement this. So we're going to look at the 2 bookends, number 1 and number 5, modeling the way and encouraging the heart in a little bit more detail. So stick with me. I know it's a lot of words, but this is really important. The practice is defined what great leaders do, and these behaviors determine whether it actually happens. So if we're to look at model the way, that's the practice. And these are the behaviors that determine if it actually happens. Do I set a personal example? Do I make certain that people adhere to the principles and standards? That's accountability, right? Do I follow through on promises and commitments that I make? Do I ask for feedback on how my actions affect other people's performance? Do I build a consensus around a common set of values for running our organization? And am I clear about my philosophy of leadership? Just remember, your team is always watching, and your behavior sets the standards. I used to say this little lesson to my kids. Lessons are better caught than taught. Stop telling them what you expect and show them what you expect. You have to model the way. Albert Schweitzer says it this way: example is not the main thing in influencing others, it is the only thing. So if you see employees or direct reports not doing what you want, you're going to think maybe it's on them, but maybe it's sometimes the opportunity to hold up a mirror and saying, I think I'm getting feedback from them because they think it's okay to do this, because maybe they see me do this. I know it's like chiseling. I know it's painful to think about those things, because as leaders, we want to think we're doing a great job, and not a lot of people are giving us feedback because of our position. So you need to be the first one. You need to do an audit of yourself and saying, when I see people show up late, I think I'm getting feedback because maybe they've seen me show up late. If I see people interrupt or become discouraged, maybe they've seen me do that. So you always have to look. You model the way. All right, lessons are better taught than taught. So if you're going to do an audit, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions here, and just think about these in your head. And we're going to go through them quickly, but we can put them out in the material later. Okay, so quick audit. Imagine for the next 60 days, you're setting the perfect personal example. What would you do differently than you're doing now? If you're the perfect person, the perfect leader for 60 days, and you're setting that perfect personal example, what would you do differently than you're doing right now? Little chisel hit right there, a little hammer hit. What do you wish leaders you've worked for in the past had done more of? You look at your leaders in the past. What do you wish they had done more of? Your third question: where do you think there might be a disconnect between what you say and what you do? Ouch, that hurts. And it hurt me when I read these too. So that was my personal journey, me being the stone. All right. And here's the last one. Why should someone want to follow you? Have you established the credibility, or are you relying on your position? Something to think about, a little audit. Tough questions, I get it. But I think they can be very helpful if you can be reflective, all right, on that. So that's the front bookend. Then let's go all the way back to number 5, the encourage the heart. So that's the practice.
John, before we go to the next one, I want to remind people, if they have questions, they can ask them at the top of their screen. Just put it in Q&A. I certainly have a lot of questions. So is it okay if I ask you a question about the first one?
Yeah, go ahead, Maya.
We go back? Okay. So model the way. So how do you suggest people model the way when they might be under pressure, or when leadership above them is not modeling it well?
Okay. Great question. So the first one, under pressure, it's kind of the consistency, right? It's when, if you are overreact to a situation, really what you're teaching them, it's okay to overreact when the stuff hits the fan, right? It's okay. And it's not okay. A leader needs to be level-headed. And so that's where sometimes if we stop and think about it, and this is what it's asking, stop and think. We can let our emotions impact our thoughts. And I think what this does is saying, let our thoughts impact our emotions, right? So it's kind of working backwards. So we always act on how we feel. But they're saying if you change the way you think, you can actually manipulate how you feel, which would change how you act. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. It makes sense in my head. But if I can say, oh, this is the situation where I would typically get upset or angry at. Okay. Let me pause for a second. Okay. Let me try to rechange my thinking. And if I rechange my thinking, rather than creating a narrative in my head that's wrought by emotions, let me go ahead and say, let me suspend judgment and now extend curiosity. And if I'm getting upset with a person, maybe I'll pull them in and say, can you help me figure this out? Why did you respond that way? Do you see what impact it may or may not have had on the team? And then you're extending curiosity, which allows them to kind of come more your way than saying, hey, when you did this, this is the effect that it had, and now we got to fix it. That's creating a narrative. So if that's one, it's you've got to go ahead and get in your head first, and then your emotions. And what was your second question, Maya?
So how do you model the way if your leaders are not modeling the right way?
Another great question. We don't believe in trickle down economics when it comes to leadership. Okay, that those things are completely in a probability set we would call mutually exclusive. They're independent of each other. So you have to have the strength to say, I'm not going to copy my leader because I don't think either their emotional response or their tardiness or their inability to complete the assignment or just kind of pass off things. I don't think that affects me. I'm going to go ahead and be the leader I want to be. So if I'm going to put this, like, go back to some of you on the call know me, I've got 5 kids, and somebody taught me something early on in raising parents is I need to be the person I want my kids to become. So I wanted my kids to be readers. So I actually had to turn off the TV and start reading. I wanted my kids to be healthy. So I actually had to get off the couch and start exercising. I needed to be the person I wanted my kids to become. And I think the same thing's true in leadership. You can control your settings, your surroundings, your thoughts, and your feelings. You need to be the leader that you always wish you had, regardless of what you see. So that's that kind of the question. So we good? Does anybody else have a question? Boy, that was a hard one, Maya.
Great answer. Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll go back to the encourage the heart. This is the one that I found the most fascinating in reading, okay? Because here are the practices, okay? Praise people for job well done, makes a point to let people know their confidence, and you can read it. I don't need to read it for you, but I'll leave it up there on the screen. You can kind of go through that. So they asked a question of a lot of C-suite, high-level S&P 500 leaders, the big players with the big organizations, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar organizations. They said, do you need encouragement to do your job? And I'd say very close to 100% said, no, I don't need encouragement to do my job. I'm a big boy. I'm a big girl. I'll put on my big boy pants, my big girl pants. I'll do my job. And I know I'm doing it well. I have intrinsic internal motivation rather than extrinsic and external motivation. I don't need somebody to give me a pat on the back and say, hey, do a good job. But then they changed the question. And this is where it gets fascinating. They changed the question and said, okay, when you get encouragement, are you more motivated to do your job? And it went from 100% said, no, I don't need it, to 100% say yes. When somebody recognizes me as a leader, whether it's my stakeholder, what other stakeholder, your C-suite people or your exec team, your stakeholders, your board, say you did a good job, you're like, I'm more motivated to do my job. So think about that encouraging the heart. When you catch people doing something right and you praise people, you're actually doing it. People repeat behaviors that get recognized. Encouragement builds engagement and trust. I mean, it's great. I mean, I see it in my personal life over and over again. I've seen it in the business world over and over again. Um, how we doing on time, Maya? Are we doing okay for a personal story? Okay. A personal story is back in the day before we had apps on our phone that tracked all our money and all our spending. All right, we had a checkbook. I mean, I've been married 30 years now. We had a checkbook. For the love of God, my wife could not track in the checkbook on the little registry that said I paid a check here and I paid a check here and I paid a check here. I had no idea how much money was in our bank account. And I was very meticulous before we got married. And it caused a little bit of tension in our marriage. I'm not going to lie. Um, and we would talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. Well, one day she took the checkbook, she wrote the check, she filled it out in the registry, did the subtract, and put the new balance in there. When I saw the checkbook, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Well, you know what? That actually built momentum. And because I praised her for thanking her for that and recognizing it, the behavior then was repeated. People repeat what gets recognized. So I'm going to ask you guys a tough question, right? Um, who on your team is doing something right now that hasn't been acknowledged yet? Who on your team? Think about it. Because if you want that behavior to be repeated, you got to call it out. You got to praise them for it, or else they'll say, does this even matter? Nobody sees the difference I'm making. And then you're working against yourself. And then you have a whole lot more work to do and try to get them to back up the speed on doing that. So some key behaviors: recognize specifically and personally, celebrate progress, not just results, show appreciation consistently. Okay. So whatever gets recognized gets repeated. Okay. Very important. I think we all know this quote by Maya Angelou. People may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And we talk about praising progress. This is critical. All right. We need to get out of the habit of praising outcomes and praise processes. We've got to stop praising, accomplishments and start praising effort. This is key psychological behavior. And I'm going to use a sports metaphor because it's the word I lived in for 18 to 20 years. So I'm so sorry if it's not you, but you can see this is praise the effort, not the outcome. So I had parents on the soccer team that would reward kids for scoring goals. Okay, I'm going to give you, hey, every goal, and they think they're helping me out as a coach. Every time you score a goal, I'm going to give you $5. So you're going to be more aggressive and go to the goal and shoot that. It didn't work that way. I would lose more games because parents trying to reward the outcome and the win and the goal as opposed to the effort. So I had to pull all my parents aside. We had a team meeting and I said, stop doing that. Reward how many loose balls are won, because that teaches growth. And then we have more opportunity to score. Reward, all right, how many takeaways or tackles? Tackles in football, stealing, or in soccer is taking the ball away, not taking them to the ground like American football. But reward the effort. I saw you hustle. I saw how hard you worked and how sweaty you are, because that's something that's in their control. The outcome is not in their control. And when I used to teach in an academic classroom, you would try to praise the A's and the B's, but you need to praise how hard they work, because then they can work even harder to get to the next thing. So with your team, with your kids, with your coach, whatever your direct reports, praise the effort. All right. And then you'll get the results you want. But if you praise the results, people might be afraid to fail and not take those chances. So I know I'm talking a lot. I'm so sorry. But to bring a full circle, that with the leadership practices that we're talking about, it's a set of learnable practices. And that's why this matters so much, because leadership isn't built in the big moments of getting a promotion. It's built on what we repeatedly do. What you do speaks so loudly. Sorry. I'm going to quote Ralph Waldo Emerson here. I got to make sure I give him the quote. You don't think I'm some genius in coming up with these things on his own. But Ralph Waldo Emerson says it this way: what you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. Your actions. This is all about actions. Do the things good leaders do, and then you'll have the influence that good leaders have. Stop trying to do the influence, the manipulation, the coercion, or the intimidation. Do the practices. You know, the famous American philosopher Will Durant, he summarizes a quote by Aristotle. He says, "We are what we repeatedly do." So then excellence is not an act, but it's a habit. I mean, this stuff I think is foundational. And this is where I love it because I feel like there's timely principles in leadership and there's timeless principles. And the whole time I was reading this book, I'm like, this is good stuff. Like, if to me, a timeless principle is if you read it and you go, duh, that really makes a lot of sense. Why didn't anybody tell me this earlier? That's how I felt the whole time reading this book. So just to kind of wrap this slide up, just a few more things I want to say. Nothing else is so conclusively proves your ability to lead than a person who can lead themselves day to day. Become the leader within. And when you become the leader within and the angel is released in your flaws and your brokenness and your incapacities, then you release that leader. Now you have the chance to become from the statue to the sculptor. James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, if you ever read it, he says, you'll never rise to the level of your goals. You're only going to fall to the level of your systems and your standards. So some people make these huge goals up here. I want to do this, but their systems are the problem. Whether they eat poorly, lack of exercise, don't read, all these things. It's change your systems, and then you'll get to the level of your goal. So it's great stuff. Atomic Habits, another good read. So I want to challenge you to release the leader within and do it by making micro adjustments day to day. Just like Michelangelo did in that story I shared at the beginning, by carefully improving over a period of time. So leadership's not a title you hold, but it's a set of behaviors you practice. So what you do this week matters more than what you learned today. So just keep that in mind. Thank you for attending. As far as next steps, if you want to learn more, Maya's going to share, there's this little question and answer sheet we put together to help you reflect on what you heard today, maybe some next steps, all that stuff. And we are recording this, as Maya said in the beginning, so if you want to watch it again. So next steps, I'd encourage you to download the worksheet and walk through the exercises. Hey, explore the leadership challenge in greater detail, whether it's through a podcast, actually getting the book and reading it, talking with somebody about it, listening to a TED talk about it, any of those things. Explore the leadership in greater detail. You will not be disappointed. And then determine the best pathway to develop your leadership. What do you want to do? I mean, we're right here at the college. We can help you out. We love doing this stuff. That's what we're here for, to increase people's capacity, and not only you, but also our own. So last little thing, a next free webinar is going to be organizational design in the age of AI and automation, Thursday, May 14th. These are some of the past webinars we've done. We got a lot of great feedback on the strategy to execution, why great plans stall, because a lot of people talk a good game, but it's actually delivering a good game. And that's where you get the best ROI, when you can actually have a great strategy plus great execution. You'll see that S curve that we talked about, and that really have a steep slope. So I think that's it for me. Those are our past webinars. You can get in contact with me if you want, or you can, for those of you that work here, you can just come down to K117. That's where I am. So I'm going to turn it over to Maya, because I think there might be a few questions that she has. So with that,
we got
done.
some good questions. So if you don't mind, let's go back to the slide where we have all 5 practices. The question is about the third one.
Challenging the process.
Challenge the process. So what do you do when the organizational culture actively discourages behavior like challenge the process?
Ooh. So somebody wants to challenge the process and they're told, don't challenge the process?
Yeah. Or maybe the culture is not to challenge the process and just go with whatever.
I mean,
the flow.
I mean, I'd say be a student of history. Like the road is wide that have crippled organizations that said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Right? I mean, what's the very common saying? It's if you don't like change, you better embrace irrelevance. Like, things are changing all the time. Things are changing all the time. If you didn't like change, back then we wouldn't have cars, right? If you didn't like green energy, then we want to have electric cars. Is change is good. Be a proponent of change, because without change, we would still be riding horses, all right, and living in the dark. Like, change is good. So be a student of history with that and challenge that. Don't get stuck in your processes. You should not have a sacred cow to say, we can't do this. Challenge process. Innovation is critical, because without innovation, organizations die. They just do. Okay. I mean, where's Blockbuster right now? Who's been the last person who's been to Blockbuster? Show me your BlackBerry, right? Show me your Palm Pilot. They got stuck. They got stuck. So if you want to be irrelevant, then don't change. If you want to be relevant in the future, start thinking about how do we prepare for change and create change. So challenge the process. So a couple things. There's two behaviors that I've written that we kind of skipped. It's behavior one is question an existing process and suggest just a small improvement. Talk about micro improvements at first. If major disruption causes anxiety and tension and workload, okay, let's start with micro changes. How can we make the system faster? But you have to create bandwidth in your day, in your team meetings, to say, let's look at one process. Is there anything we can do with the collective intelligence? And there's bright people in your teams to say, with collective intelligence, what's one thing we can do to make this process not more cumbersome, but more efficient? Okay. So ask that. Is there a faster, simple way we could do this step? That's just a micro adjustment. If you want to go a little bit bigger, is encourage experimentation and normalizing learning from failure. Hey, let's take this over here. Let's create a think tank, I guess, if you will, and work at it in a vacuum so it doesn't affect everything else over here. Let's beta test it. And if it's working well, and we like, oh my gosh, let's show it to a few other people, get what you would call some influencers on that, say, hey, look at this, try this for a little bit. We just did something like that in the organization I work for. Is it was becoming cumbersome to try to do some time off requests. Well, one of our teams kind of created this little spreadsheet in Teams. You just click on it, and it goes right to our supervisor. He approves it, boom, done. Like, I mean, that was a small micro adjustment, but man, it does help a lot. It helps a lot, whether it's religious leave, sick leave, or vacation time. So I'd say if they say don't change anything, push back a little bit in a gentle way, maybe, but don't become the enemy.
Yeah, and maybe don't use the word challenge or change, to avoid resistance and,
Yeah.
Okay, so great question. We also have a question for everyone who listened to this webinar. I'm going to launch this poll question, so please answer if you would. The next question, John, I have is, well, many organizations tend to evaluate employees far more than leaders. And, I'm sure many of you might be going through the annual review process right now, doing the evaluations. So the question is, what are the most credible ways to hold leaders accountable for their impact? And what evidence would convince you that underperformance is primarily a leadership failure rather than the employee issue?
Well, that's an old quote from Bear Bryant, by the way, the legendary coach of Alabama. He would always tell his players, if you lose, it's my fault. If you win, thank you. Right. So, I mean, that crosses multiple industries. But I would say leaders need to be open to getting evaluated from their direct reports, because that's where the leadership is. If it's always from a pyramid effect and a trickle-down effect, it's not accurate data. It just isn't. It's one-dimensional. So a lot of organizations I work with, we actually do 360s. So I go into like an organization, State Highway, MDTA, Maryland Port Authority, Kenora Brake, and we do 360 evaluations. And 360 is exactly what it sounds like. It's a person's getting rated from their supervisor, from multiple direct reports, and then from peers. It's all of those things. So, and the gold standard, and I know I'm a big proponent, is the LPI 360. That's the Leadership Practices Inventory. And it just measures, is a leader practicing the things that make a good leader? Why I think the LPI 360 is critical, because it just measures behaviors. It does not look at intent or philosophy, where some of the other ones do. And so it's so easy to say, like, hey, I don't get recognized when I do a good job. But then when a leader reads that, You just say, oh, all I need to do is recognize people for doing a good job more. It's an easy fix, and it's just adjusting the behavior. So that's really good, and you don't have to take it personal. I know a lot of people do. Like when we get met with criticism or critiquing, if you're aware of the 5 Ds, right, of receiving criticism, it's some people deny it, then some people defend, some people dismiss, some people deflect, but we got to get to the fifth one where we can discuss. That's the highest level, right? So you got to go through that process and say, okay, I'm asking people to tell me how I'm doing, and I want you to be hungry for feedback because that's the only way you get better. If I coached for 18 years and never gave my players feedback, they'd still be amoeba ball chasing the ball around as they're high school players and not staying in their position and just kicking the ball, booting the ball rather than playing the ball through the midfield and distributing the ball at the field and having good touches and control. Like you've got to be willing to have good feedback. Like because that's how you grow. Sorry. I get into this, don't I?
No, I can see you're very passionate. I love
Yeah.
it. So it's a great answer.
Oh, sorry. I'll calm it down a
So
bit.
do you see it? No, that's great. Do you see the poll answers? What's one specific behavior from the book you will try this week? So
Oh,
enable
yeah.
others to act, modeling, two-way accountability. That's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge the process, inspire. I'm also curious. So this, is there something in this book that you disagree with or you think is outdated?
Not outdated, and it's an old book. I
Yes.
think it's over 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in it that I think is outdated. Um, I will, do I, anything I disagree with? Oh gosh, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll bring it full circle. I seriously felt like when I was reading this book, and I have it, where is it? It's over there, right out there on my bookshelf. So I was reading this book, I was being chiseled away at. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
hopeful that the leader within was released because I just wanted to put these things in practice. I had a situation the other day. I don't know if I could, I'll share some of it, not in detail. I was in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The content of the meeting wasn't relevant to me at the time. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked up my phone. I became disengaged and was on my phone, okay, during the meeting. And it was a small, intimate meeting. I thought about that as I was preparing for this. I was like, I set a very poor example of what a team player is. So I actually went to my the person that was running the meeting the next day because I had trouble sleeping that night and I apologized. I said, I had trouble sleeping. I want to apologize for something. And they said, well, what is it? I said, I want to apologize for my behavior and my posture in our meeting the other day. And then we had a greater discussion and it ended that my behavior was not acceptable for a team player. Even though it wasn't relevant to me, I need to be supportive and aware of my leader in the meeting and the rest of the team and not disengage because I had nothing to offer. And if I was called upon, I would have had nothing to offer because I wasn't listening. I was disengaged. So I apologize. And the feedback that I got from this person was that was great self-awareness. And thank you for that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to practice what I taught, and it was hard because I could have just ignored it and swept it away and tried to do a better job, but I had to acknowledge my inappropriate actions during that meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think self-awareness is a big part of
Yeah.
leadership. We have a great question from someone in this group. So, is it possible to do a deeper dive on step 2 and 4? I know we're out of time, but John has some suggestions. Or maybe the book outlines those steps directly.
Yeah. Depends how deep you want to get. You can read and go through it. I actually got trained. I'm actually going to be like uh market myself a little bit, but I actually went through the 2 week training and am a leadership challenge practitioner certificate. I have it right here, but I'd be happy, you can't see it. I'd be
We
happy to
can see.
talk to anybody in more detail or work with the team or even recommend the LPI 360 and have your team take it. There are fees to do that. It's not a free thing because it's so robust and so good, but I'd be happy to talk with anybody about it. If it saves you time, great. But as we talked about in the next steps, is you can explore on your own. It's great. Great. But when you go through the training like I did, for me, it's like if you go to the Grand Canyon, you look at the Grand Canyon from the rim, it's amazing. It's amazing. That's what this webinar is. When you travel down a little bit more, you get to see a little bit. That's reading the book. When you actually meet with somebody that's been trained and certified, that's like walking down all the way to the bottom of the base of the Grand Canyon, seeing all the nuances that happen with it. Like, how deep do you want to go and what's your time? We can do whatever.
Mhm. Great
So,
analogy. I can attest, we brought John to my team to do some exercises, and it was great. So I highly recommend if anyone is interested. Okay, so John, last question, because we have only 4 minutes left. If people leave this discussion today and only change one behavior tomorrow, what should it be?
I mean, it probably depends where you are in your development, but I
Mm-hmm.
would say just start modeling the way. Look at those six behaviors on the model of the way, and they get played out in multiple different avenues, multiple different veins, settings. But just start modeling the way. You need to become the leader you always wish you had. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what, and when I asked that question, what would the perfect leader look like for 60 days? Is try to spend 60 days and work on one of those six behaviors under that practice of modeling the way.
Mm-hmm.
Start small. It took Michelangelo 3.5 years to make the David, right? Probably arguably one of the greatest pieces of art ever made. 3.5 years from a master. Like, this book will chisel away. It's not going to be instantaneous. I know we live in a world of instant gratification, but this is about discipline and behaviors and practices. Think of your investment portfolio. Put a little bit in over a long period of time, you'll see drastic changes. Making these micro adjustments over a long period of time is going to make you the person that either prepares you for a leadership role if you don't have it yet, or makes you better at your leadership role if you already have it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I think that wraps up our presentation today. We have a lot of great webinars coming up every 2 weeks, so stay tuned. Make sure to check your email, opt in to receive business solution communications, and we would love to see you at our next event. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to John at any time. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.